Welcome back to another episode of the Bonsai Stuff podcast. As always, it's me, Scott Martin from Bonsai Matsu, and what a brilliant time of the year it is to be a pine lover. It's the best. I think that they look absolutely magnificent now. A lot of work, a lot involved in getting them where they need to be, but to be honest with you, it's one of my favourite times of the year. It's chilly, it's cold. Sometimes the work's a little bit uncomfortable when the trees are a bit wet, when you're in there working, plucking needles and that sort of thing. But it's so satisfying to take a tree that looked a bit scrappy, been allowed to grow a little bit. It's pushed out and done what it's been paid to do, really. It's grown, it's extended, it's put on a lot of mass, and then to take it and make it beautiful again in a relatively short period of time. It's so satisfying. I love it. It's one of my favourite times of the year. So as part of that, I wanted to add in for this podcast a few little tips and tricks that I've come across during the last couple of weeks. As you know, with my trees, sometimes I leave wire on a little bit longer than what's ideal. Sometimes it cuts in a little bit, especially with the pines. I really don't mind that when they start to sort of bite a little bit, and it helps hold the branches, because I don't want to have to wire the same area over and over and over. So I always overwire a little bit heavier with the gauge of wire that I use, but also leave it on there just a fraction longer than what should be. And sometimes that fraction longer, being honest, is a lot longer. So I want to talk about wire removal techniques that you can use in your yard as well with your bonsai. And there's a couple other things too about buying yourself some time when you've got a really important decision to make, and also a bit more on the design side. It's created a lot of comments, a lot of discussion, a lot of comments about what people think and that sort of thing. So I just want to talk a little bit more about that. And also the other thing, I was walking around my neighbourhood the other day, and I think as tree lovers, as bonsai enthusiasts, we need to be really mindful that we do our research on the trees that we have in our yard and our collection, and understand what's going to happen with them over a longer period of time. And what sparked that comment was walk past a new house that's just been built literally around the corner from me, bulldozed, knocked down, rebuilt this monstrous house. And within about a metre of the front door, there's a gum tree that's been planted. And it looks beautiful for now, and it's really small and skinny, and wouldn't be much thicker than than your thumb growing, but that thing's going to be enormous, and it's about a metre from the front door, and the damage that thing's going to do as it grows and the mess it's going to make. Anyway, just prompted me to say, maybe we need to focus a little bit more on understanding the trees or the bonsai that you acquire before you acquire them. Do some research, have a look and see what's involved with them and how they're going to grow and all that sort of thing, rather than buying them because they look pretty. Look at what's going to happen with them over time. So anyway, let's get into this podcast. Wire that's been left on too long is a bit of a pain. The best advice I can give you is make sure that, best advice would be take it off before it cuts in too far. But secondly, make sure that you never leave wire wrapped around a branch or a trunk or anything like that. And I know that there are some nurseries out there that use the technique of scarring and wrapping wire around a tree and leaving it there and having it, in a relatively short period of time swell up and make the nabari or the trunk look better in that spot. It's not a technique that I subscribe to be honest. I think it can do more damage than good. And I've seen trees where the wire's been left on and the scarring just looks ugly. You get if you look at it from a distance, you can see the swelling of the trunk in that area, but you'll see the line where the wire was, and it grows funny around the wire. The tree never seems to get over the fact that there's wire in there, and it can be a real pain in the bum. So anyway, I was working on a tree the other day, a big radiata, and I looked at some wire that had accidentally been left in there. I didn't mean to leave it in there, but it had been left in there. And the tree had started to bleed sap around the area, and because it was copper wire that had been used on the tree, the sap had sort of come out a bluey green colour as well. Completely normal for that. Wish I hadn't done it, but I did. And I thought to myself, wow, that wire's pretty much cut in there now. how am I going to get this thing out? Like I cannot get it with wire cutters. The tree seems to be enveloping this thing, but I've got to get it out. I've got to fix this before it becomes a major problem somewhere down the track, or it's just been a perpetual problem that sort of never goes away. So one thing I've bought myself over the years is a beautiful pair of stainless steel needle nose pliers that are really fine, really, really sharp little tip on them, perfect little teeth on there to grab hold of things. And I use them a lot with creating deadwood, because they can really be specific on which part of the fibre you're grabbing when you're starting to tear things off, and you can get some really fine detailed work on there. But I also use them at times like this because my normal pliers that I use are a bit fat on the tip, and sometimes I cannot get in there to unwind the wire with a big pair of pliers. So I'll use these very fine tip needle nose pliers to get right in there, try and grab a piece of the wire, and then start to unwind it without doing any minimising the damage that I'm doing. You are going to have it, if it's cut in quite significantly, that the cambium, the new bark that's rolling over, will start to tear off. That's naturally going to happen, but the tree will heal over that again. So don't stress too much that you are going to do a little bit of damage as you're unwinding, but you have to unwind it. So first thing is, I found that the needle nose pliers are great, and the second part is that you have to unwind the wire. You have to, if once it's cut in quite significantly, you need to be able to unwind that wire. You won't be able to cut it and take it in sections because it's just going to be way too deep and jammed in there. With that said, you've got to be careful that you're not doing damage when you're unwinding to areas around there. So I find that if I can get, if I'm unwinding with my right hand, then my left hand, I'm in there, I'm lifting up foliage so I can get as much movement in and around that branch as what I possibly can. It's bad enough that I've left the wire on there too long, and it's a bit of a pain to get rid of it. That I do not want to be doing secondary damage and breaking branches of other pads or other areas of the tree to remove that wire that I've left in there too long. So I'm really careful when I'm unwinding it. And you might find that you'd sort of do one turn of unwinding, come in with your wire cutters, shorten that wire back a little bit, then grab it with the pliers again, and then start the unwinding process again. Cut it, keep unwinding it that way. And that way you don't have like a big daggy long piece of wire that you're trying to unwind around some really fine, delicate areas of the tree. So just be careful that when you unwind, then cut, unwind, then cut. But leave yourself enough of a tail on the wire that you can grab it with those pliers again. Otherwise, you create a nightmare for yourself. Now, the other technique that I use is, and I want to talk about this a little bit, is the pull-through technique. Right, so when you get to an area on the branch where it comes back to, say, a junction, or it connects to the trunk, often what I'll find is, if I started the wire on top of the branch, then that bark there, the rollover part where it envelops the wire, can set pretty hard, and it can become a bit of a nightmare, and you're actually going to do quite significant damage to the branch if you start looking at tearing that wire off there and ripping up all that new bark and cambium that's formed. Again, this sounds really dramatic because the wire's got to be on there for a little while before this happens, but I guarantee you it does happen. And this pull-through technique is one that I really, really like. So what I'll do is, let's say, the wire starts on top of a branch junction and folds off left and right onto two branches. And they're both cut in pretty bad. I'll use the needle nose pliers to start the unwind, cut, and I'll get back up till I've got the wire back at the junction or back at this serious part where it's been completely enveloped. And then what I'll do is I'll pull the wire so it's as straight as I possibly can get it. All right, so there's no kink in the wire, and it won't be very long. Like, it'll be sticking out maybe, a centimetre either side of where it's been enveloped inside this branch junction where the new bark's formed. And I'll cut the wire. I'll have pulled it straight, then I'll cut the wire so it's only sticking out, like I said, about a centimetre either side. So I've got some really good grip or leverage on that wire when I want to remove it. Then what I'll do is I'll actually take my pliers and I'll grab that wire and I'll turn it in a circle. So you're not pulling it yet at this stage, but you're just rotating it around a little bit. because the wire's nice and short, it'll be nice and firm, and you'll have some real grip on it. By rotating it around, it breaks the seal it's got with the cambium or the bark or whatever part of the tree that's grown in and sort of sucked onto it and held onto it. The sap, let's say, that's glued to it. So by turning it around just a little bit and then pull it straight back. Be very careful when you pull it back, because you'll feel great tension on it. It'll fight you all the way. And then all of a sudden it gives. So if you're pulling it really hard and you've got another branch behind you or whatever, then you've got to be careful that when it starts to give, that you don't smash something else off as you're pulling that wire out. But that pull through technique is one that I've found is really useful and a great technique. So you get it straight, you cut it short, you rotate it around, and then you pull it through. Be careful when you pull it through that it doesn't actually smash through the another part of the tree. But yeah, it's really important to, as I said at the start, really important to make sure that you get rid of all of the wire off the tree when you're doing this removal technique, especially if it's cut in a little bit, because it can create really ugly swelling and just a nightmare down the track. Absolute nightmare. I've had trees where I've worked on them that have come from other places. This isn't me, but hand on heart, it's not me. But where I've gone through and I said, I'm going to remove that branch, I'll cut it off, and as I go to cut it off, there's wire still in the middle of that branch. So it's a bit of a pain, to be honest, because if they've used copper or whatever, then you run the risk of damaging your branch cutters or whatever it is that you're cutting the tree with, a saw or something like that. So it's just good habit, good practice to get rid of the wire. It's really good practice to not let it happen in the first place, but it does happen, and I've found that those needle nose pliers are great. The unwinding technique, the cut and unwind as you're going around the branches, and lastly that pull through technique can be a bit of a godsend, to be honest. Major decisions on your bonsai have to be made. They have to be made, and depending on how you see it will depend on how major the decision is that you've got to make. But I'll find that when I'm working through a tree, especially if I'm working on a customer's tree that I haven't looked at for a long time, I've got that whole speed dating approach where I'm in there, I'm being asked to make a decision. What do you do with this branch? Do you take it off? Do you cut it? Do you keep it? What do you do? And I feel that I'm under the pressure. And when you're removing something, you've got to make sure it's the right thing. You can come back from it. You can redesign trees. You can keep evolving them. But I find that in my head, when I'm doing major things, and even with my trees, and that, again, this is something that's only come up over the last couple of weeks working on some of my trees, where I'll look at it and I'll look at a branch and I'll cover it up with my hand. I'll put a tea towel over it. I'll think about it. I'll take a photo. I'll do all the things that that you should do. But I find when it comes to crunch time, I find it's really important to buy yourself some thinking time. Okay? And that's when you get to stop, you get to draw a breath, and you get to just seriously think about it. When I'm talking about thinking, I'm not talking about procrastinating. I'm not talking about, holding off a decision that needs to be made. I'm just saying if it's a serious decision, just buy yourself some time. A couple of techniques that I use is I'll work around that area. I'll get it to the point where I go, yeah, it's got to go. And then I'll go, you know what, I'm just going to do that next part. I'm just going to do that next branch around there. Then I'll come back to it. Then I'll walk around and I'll be thinking about, I'll have in the back of my head, remove, keep, what's going to look better. Is it the right thing to do? And I'll work on that branch, and I find that I can just calm myself down. I can get the decision set in my head. So then when I finish that next section, I can come back to it and go, yes, it's got to go. Or no, I'm going to keep that. That's going to stay for this time. Another one I had was, and again, it's on this big radiata. There was one that it doesn't seem significant, but there was one area right up at the apex where I thought it's nice and full. I think it's a little bit too full. I'd like to let some more light in there. I'd like to break that space up a little bit. I'd like to do something with it because the branch is starting to get a bit thicker. There's other things around that area that will eventually grow into there, but I just wouldn't mind removing it. And I was looking at it and I was plucking. And I'd go to the next area and I'd come back and look at it and go, I don't know. Is it going to be too big a gap? Is it going to set it back too far? Is it the right thing? Am I just looking to cut something for the sake of cutting something? That's really the thought that was going through my head. So I looked at it, worked on the tree for hours and hours and hours, kept coming back to it, and I went, I've got to do something. It's either you can make a decision. Don't just walk away from it without having made a decision. And that decision didn't need to be to cut it. It just needed to be to decide whether it's staying as part of the plan or whether it's going to be removed as part of the plan. So, I went inside. I boiled the kettle, made myself a cuppa, sat down for a minute, wasted brain cells on my phone, gave myself 5 or 10 minutes to make the decision, walked back out and looked at it and went, I'm going to keep it. I think I'm going to keep it. I think it's the right thing to do. And then, I just worked around the rest of the tree, came back, and I thought, what I'm going to do? I'm going to actually cut parts of it. So I removed parts of it and left parts of it. Thought, that looks good. That's the right thing to do because I've still got the fullness that I want. It's not too full. I haven't been dramatic about it. I haven't lopped off a whole branch. Does it mean it's going to be there next time that I sit and look at the tree? Yeah, who knows? I don't know. Maybe, maybe not. I definitely know that area of the tree, as part of my plan, doesn't need to get any longer, doesn't need to get any thicker, doesn't need to be any more robust. So it's the thing that I look at is trying to work it back and keep it open and let sunlight in there, let that bud conveyor keep pumping along, which is nice to hear because people are starting to talk about the bud conveyor now. It's starting to become part of your bonsai vocabulary, which is awesome way to think about your trees. I wish I'd known about it, 100 years ago when I first started bonsai. That if you worked on the periphery of the tree and kept it nice and light and open, the inner part grows and then pushes out, and then you can keep everything nice and compact. But anyway, it's never too late, I suppose. Old dogs and new tricks, that sort of thing. But it is really important not to feel the pressure of the moment and not to feel that you have to do something. The other side of the coin is it's really important not to leave something that needs to be done. And that's where this temporary stop, this thinking time, that clarity of mind so you can make the right decision is perfect. And it doesn't need to be much. It just maybe grab the dog and go for a walk around the block. Or, like I said, make a cuppa or sleep on it. If it's a major one, sleep on it. Think about it. Come back the next morning, bang, done. Whatever it has to be. Keep it, don't keep it. Seek opinions from other people as you should do, part of your bonsai network that you've got. But don't feel pressured. That's the most important part, I suppose, I'm trying to convey with this section of the podcast is that you do need to sit there and draw a breath and think about what the plan is for the tree, and is whatever you're going to do going to be good for the tree, and is it the right thing to do for the plan that you've got for your bonsai? If it is, take action. If it's not, then leave it for a little bit longer. Let it stay there. The worst that's going to happen with procrastinating, with leaving these decisions, is your plan might be delayed a little bit. All right, you might be held back a year or 2 years, or you might find that you get a bit of swelling in an area where there's multiple branches coming from. And while these things at the time aren't ideal, you can move on from them. You don't have to be stuck in that rut where you feel pressured. You've got to get back to 2 branches. I can't have any more than 2. Yeah, that's true, but delaying a decision by 5 minutes or a day, it's not going to be the end of the world. So just deep breath, buy yourself some thinking time, then make the right decision. Keep, cut, whatever it is. At the time, it'll be the right decision. Does it mean it's locked in forever? Definitely not. Okay, so now talking about bonsai design. I've had lots of comments, lots of messages about it. People really enjoyed it. It was great. Yep, I think it is an important topic to cover off on, about how unique our perspective is and should be when it comes to our trees. But then I want to also make it really clear that when it comes to design and layout of your trees and your branch positioning and that sort of thing, that it's okay, as far as I'm concerned, if your tree or your design or your plan for your tree sort of falls into line like it looks like someone else's tree. And so I'm really careful about how I say this because, and you can hear me thinking as I'm saying it, because the question I wrote down in my podcast notes was, is it wrong to want a bonsai that looks like another one? And some people, there's the people out there that believe that bonsai, there's too many that look the same, that they sort of copy a pattern or they copy a layout, and that you should have something that's definitely unique and it should never look the same as anything else. And God, that's hard. It's hard to do. I reckon any tree around the world that I've ever seen, I could find another one that looks similar to it. And I don't care how unique you say it is. There's always, there's only so many variables. Considering that we're constrained horticulturally as to what we can do with the trees, it's very rare to get trees that are 100% unique, and it's almost impossible. So, what I'd like to say as part of this from me to you, to my global bonsai crew, is that I don't think it's a wrong thing to want one of your trees to look like another one. I don't think it's negative. Imitation's the greatest form of flattery, and it's you build up this. Well, I build up. Let me talk about me. I can't talk about you, but I'll talk about me. I build up this database in my head of trees and designs and how they look and the stuff that I've seen. It happens, right? You look online, or you look in magazines, or you go to a show, or you go to your friend's place, or whenever you see trees, you can't help but build up a scenario in your head of what you like and what you don't like. And when you see a tree that you like, it's almost impossible not to take on that and say, that's beautiful. I'd really love a tree that looked like that. And some people, it's through acquisition. They'll buy a tree that they love. Other times you'll see it and go, yeah, I really love that tree when it did this, and that part of the tree where it had that dead wood was amazing. That I loved it. That was the thing I loved about that tree. I connected with it. So then when you see, or you acquire, or you get stock that potentially you can put your thumbprint on, it's almost impossible not to be influenced by what you've seen or what you've been involved with. And I don't care who you are around the world. I believe that every single bonsai artist or practitioner or enthusiast or whatever you want to call yourselves, I think we're all influenced by what we've seen and what we like, and that's why some people look at for me, I love pines. They're definitely a major part of my collection that I've got, and I put a lot of work into them and time in them, and I think about a lot of trees that I've worked on over the years and what I've seen. And when I work with a very young piece of material, it's like, okay, so what do I want to do with this one? I want to put this kind of movement in it. I want to have a branch that's here, and I want to have this that's there. I don't follow a formula. I don't have a pattern that says, all right, first, second, third branch, bend here, bend there, whatever. I don't design them all the same way. I like to let the tree lead the dance and show me what it's got, and I'll work with the tree and I'll try and accentuate what the tree's got. But invariably, there's going to be pads on that tree. There's going to be an apex on the tree. There's going to be an abari on the tree. There's going to be a lower trunk. There's going to be a left-right perspective on this thing. It's going to fall into some kind of a feel for the tree. And when you look at artist trees, you can generally tell who's done what. You take some of the Japanese professionals. You look at the trees and you go, yeah, that's a such and such tree, or that one, I bet you that's such and such. And then you look down the line at the apprentices that have worked under that master and or that person, and then I can see the influence, and that it flows on, and it's not a negative thing. I think it's really positive. I think it's really great that you have been drawn to something that you love, that you're striving for, that's your ambition. So I don't think it's a negative thing, and I think the word unique is almost something which has to be taken out of the scenario, because I think they're all unique in their own certain way. The way the bark grows, the way the foliage grows, the rate of growth that it's got, the pot that you've got it in, the everything, every little part about that tree, how it develops, the type of flowers that it has, the position of the flowers, whatever it might be, is always going to be slightly different to something else. And it's so easy to lump it together and say, oh, that's just another pine tree. Oh, that's just another one of the same old tree that I've seen 400 trillion times. Yeah, what? Because it's got a bark and needles and it's in a pot. Yeah, of course. There's trillions of them like that. But this one itself is unique in its own characteristics. Sure, does it have nice rounded pads? Does it have, clean undersided branches? Yeah, of course it does. That's the way I like my trees to be kept and maintained. So I think that I'd like to encourage you to keep looking at people's trees and always think about what you do to change or improve them and how you would look after that tree, or how, what would you cut that off, or would you keep it? Would you grow that longer? Would you make that shorter? But don't, when you're thinking about trees, and especially when you're sort of early days with your bonsai life, and you feel like that perfection level is a long way away because you're grunting your way through, you're grinding your way through the layout of your trees, and you're wiring things, and you're growing seeds, and you're taking cuttings, and you're buying stock, and you're acquiring, you're building up your collection. It'll feel like it's a million years away that before you get to that point. It won't be. Guarantee it won't be. With the right procedure and right processes and right practices, then you will get there. You'll get there relatively a lot quicker than what you think. But it's not wrong to look at someone else's tree or look at another bonsai and go, that's beautiful. I'd love a tree like that. I personally reckon that's an awesome way to go about it. It helps you focus in on what you want. If you go into bonsai saying, okay, it's got to be unique, then you'll do things with the design of the tree that you may regret somewhere down the track. But secondly, it may not be able to grow the way that you want it to grow, and therefore you're going to do damage to the tree and to yourself. You're going to do something, take a risk, and maybe pay the ultimate price, or your tree will pay the ultimate price for it, because you've followed this suggestion that everything has to be unique. It'll be unique by itself. The way it grows, the way it develops over time, it'll be unique. But I just think that this database that we build in our own brains of what we like about bonsai and what we don't like, just keep that going. Keep that, look at a tree. Does it go into the I like pile or I don't like pile? Okay, that's in the I don't like pile. Oh, cool. So that also helps you when you're designing trees to say, I don't like that because of whatever. So with my trees, if I don't like the look of that one, why would I design a tree like that? Why would I maintain a tree like that? Why would I acquire a tree like that? If that's not what you like and that's not what you enjoy, why would you go down that path? It doesn't make any sense. So you look at it, I like that. What part do you like about it? Try and break it down. Try and be a bit more analytical about, rather than just saying, yeah, it's nice, it's got full pads and it's lots of foliage and a bit of trunk. Just what part do you like about it? Do you like the way that, the shadow flows back onto the trunk? How do they get that? All right, so they have that branch there coming forward a little bit to create that perspective with the trunk. Cool. All right, so I'm going to go for a bit more depth perspective with my design of my trees because I really like that and I think it looks nice. And the reason I like it is because it creates this view that when you look through a tree, the trunk looks like it's set back a little bit. Perfect. That's what I do. It doesn't mean you have to do it, but I think that rather than just that broad sweeping statement of being unique, embrace it a little bit, go with the flow, follow what you like, and don't measure centimetre for centimetre and get them so it looks like an exact replica. But if you like the look of something and you're drawn to it, then I'd use that as a real stepping stone for your bonsai and your bonsai journey, and because I guarantee it, you'll enjoy it a hell of a lot more than if you start making trees that are unique, that don't survive and you don't actually enjoy and don't want as part of your collection. Well and truly into winter now. We're almost, or just over halfway through the first month of winter in Melbourne, and it's cold. The leaves have fallen off the trees around the yard, so it's actually pretty good because we've been able to get in and do the not final, but clean up a lot more of that leaf debris around the yard and getting ready for some serious maintenance around the benches, giving everything a bit of a clean up, bit of a spray, make sure that I can knock a few things on the head before we get back into growing season. Still got plenty more to do around the yard. I still got lots of trees. An update. I've got all my finished black pines done. Got all my finished Scots pines done. I'm halfway through my radiatas. I've got my white pines left, and then I get into my developing stock. So yes, I've got to pull my finger out and get onto it, because in a couple of weeks' time, it's repotting season, and it's go time. Because once that rolls in, I'll try and be on top of that as quick as I possibly can, and just churn my way through the trees. So use this time around the yard that if you are thinking of, it's repotting season for you wherever you are around the world, Southern Hemisphere. I think we're getting into it pretty soon. It's probably an idea or a good idea to go through your yard now and start flagging trees that you want to repot. You've still got time. I've flagged a lot of mine for a long time now, especially over summer. I do it a lot there, which I've talked about on previous podcasts, because it's a time where I start to see trees struggle and think, I've got to fix that next repotting season. I've got to get on top of that tree. So I have flagged them, but if you haven't and you want to, then I think you really should, just so you know what's ahead of you, so you can plan for it. You should know, if you've listened to this podcast for more than about 10 seconds, I love the word planning. I love being prepared. I love making sure I've got all my ducks lined up. So when I get into doing something, I have learnt the hard way before, where I line up all my trees, go to repot, get partway through and go, now I've run out of mix. I don't have enough. I'm stuffed. How do I finish this now? And I'm behind the 8 ball. So I like to make sure that I'm well and truly prepared, because it means I can be efficient and I can get a hell of a lot more done and maintain a bigger collection when I'm organised than if I don't. So I would suggest now is the last chance for you to go through, organise your soil, your pot mesh, your tie-in wires, new pots, all that anything that you want to have ready to go, because repotting is going to become a frequent thing for the podcast and for everybody, I assume, very, very soon. It's nice to be organised. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed that podcast. I like talking about the design part of it and giving my perspective on things without necessarily pushing an agenda or a finished result. And hopefully you picked up that my approach to it is, do what makes you happy. Do what puts a smile on your dial and makes you want to spend time with your trees. I don't care what it is. I don't care what pot you've got your trees in, as long as you like looking at it. Because that's all that matters at the end of the day, is that your tree's happy, healthy and strong and going to develop exactly the way that you want it to develop for your plan, and that you're happy with it. That's the ultimate for me. If anyone listening to this podcast, or anyone doing bonsai around the world, really, for that matter, wants to spend time with their trees, then bingo, that's fantastic. So like I said, do what makes you happy. If you like the look of someone else's tree or another bonsai that you've seen, that's great. Incorporate it into your design profile that you use when you're developing your trees, and make it a target that you work towards. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that in the entire world. So, and while you're doing it, just buy yourself some thinking time. It's one of the best things that I do. Seriously, whenever I get stuck, grab 5, walk away, draw a breath. Doesn't mean that I procrastinate. Doesn't mean I don't do it. But I definitely make a decision whether it's to stay or go. Definitely, I will nut that out over a coffee any day of the week. So, anyway, thanks for tuning in. Thanks for listening. Thank you very much for the subscribers. A few new ones on board, 2 in the last week. So, I love you. I really do. So, thank you very much. Enjoy your trees. Make sure that you are prepared for what's coming if you're in the repotting world, and make sure that you are planned, prepared, and ready to go. Until next time, happy bonsai.